And we're back on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Nathan Baird, Andrew Gillis, and it's time to give our game picks for Ohio State's game against Michigan, the game on Saturday. Michigan favored by 3.5. The over-under is, if I remember correctly, 46 heading into that game on Saturday. Andrew, we'll start with you. What is your game score for the Buckeyes versus the Wolverines?
Yeah, for weeks, I was ready to pick Michigan, and I'm no longer ready to pick Michigan. Ohio State 23, Michigan 16. For 75% of this season, I was on the Wolverines. We kind of made reference to this on the podcast. We talked about what Ohio State was doing, what they weren't doing, and I don't want this to be a Michigan has scared me the last 2 weeks conversation. I want this to be Ohio State has cleaned up enough of the areas that I was concerned about to feel good about them going into this game. You've never felt really concerned about this defense, but I was concerned about this offensive line. I think the offensive line has done enough to prove to me that they can just be fine in this game, and fine, I think, is good enough. I think the same with Kyle McCord. So Ohio State's going to win 23-16. That's my prediction. Going back to 2009, the last 15 seasons, they are 15-1 against the spread when they are 3-point underdogs or greater. That one loss was in the national championship game against Alabama, and obviously there were some mitigating circumstances. Number one being Alabama being a super team, and two, Ohio State having some dudes out. But they do well in these spots. They are 10-6 straight up in those games that they've been 3-point underdogs. Obviously the one in 2018 when they played Michigan, 62-39, they won. Ohio State plays well in these spots. I think they're going to play well in this spot again, and they're going to win by 7 on the road.
So it's Andrew taking Ohio State plus 3.5 and an under, and I'm going to join you in that same place. 24-13, Ohio State wins. And I'm saying that where it's 17-13, and then Ohio State just has a breakaway. That's where like the Travion Henderson explosive moment happens that we saw against Notre Dame that kind of helped get the offense rolling a little bit. It wasn't the end-all be-all because it was still a game, but I think this time around, it's just a rock fight for the first 45 minutes of the game. And then at some point in the fourth quarter, after plugging away with Travion, eventually he makes the jump cut outside. Julian Fleming makes the perfect block on the perimeter, which has been an underrated part of this year, how good of a blocker Julian Fleming has been on the perimeter. He's actually the guy who sprung open the explosive run last week against Minnesota. But that type of play happens, and that's where Ohio State pulls away in that moment. So this is a game basically played in a phone booth outside of that before Ohio State breaks away late. So 24-13, Ohio State wins, snapping its 2-game losing streak to Michigan along the way. Nathan, are you going to join us with this Ohio State taking the points and also an under?
So, like Andrew, I thought this game was a toss-up for most of dating back to like the spring. And there was a time this season when it definitely was trending towards, well, Michigan's just too strong in some areas where Ohio State is a little too unsteady. And that's going to make the difference in this game. But I think that the trend coming into this game, and this could be tricky because 2021, the trend that Ohio State had coming out of the Michigan State game was that things were like atomic and they were just going to blast Michigan off the field. And that did not happen because it's a very different matchup going from, these things are decided by matchups. And yes, I know there were maybe some other things going on in that game that contributed to the score. I think this is going to be tighter than you guys do, even in terms of the final score. I think it might be a game that Ohio State has to make plays to win in the fourth quarter. I also think that it's going to be a game maybe just unlike anything. It's hard to even draw comparisons because neither team has played in an atmosphere like this. Michigan hasn't played an opponent anywhere near this competent on both sides of the ball. So I'm getting long-winded. I'm vamping too much. I'm taking Ohio State 23-22. I've known all along, especially when this line was getting up to like 6.5. No question, I'm going to take Ohio State plus the points in this game. I thought that was crazy, even when Ohio State wasn't playing its best football, that the line was quite that big. And maybe the last 2 years contributed. I don't know, but I know now. I believe now that in key areas, including Ohio State being able to run the ball, including the season-long defense that Ohio State has put out there that has stood up to any number of different challenges, that this defense is going to set the foundation, keep them in this game. And I think this offense, it has better playmakers than Michigan does, I believe. And I think those playmakers are going to make the difference, even by the slimmest of margins. So I'm taking 23-22. That would be Ohio State plus the points, and that would be just barely under the 46.
Yeah, Nathan, you're really flirting with the under there. Andrew and I are pretty comfortably under it, but you're really under it there. I respect that score, mainly because I don't think you're saying that as a knock to the defenses in this game. No. I think it's more of a nod to what both of these teams are as complete teams. That's why I like, because that could easily be taken, oh, you don't think anybody's going to get stops? No, I think they are going to get stops. But I also think there's going to be some times where somebody just breaks away and has some scores, because that's what happens in rivalry games. So those are our picks for Ohio State against Michigan on Saturday at noon on Fox. College Game Day will be there. Big Noon will be there. We'll be there too. Get the text, 614-350-3315. Pre-game, during the game, and definitely post-game, regardless of who wins. There's going to be plenty of things that we're going to be texting about. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that, 614-350-3315.